Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Sarthak Show, where we discuss about tech, career, product, and life. And we are back with the part 2 of the podcast with Dinesh. Uh, if you have not watched the part 1, you can check out the link here somewhere in the section above. And in this specific part 2, we will discuss about his life journey, his learnings, and again, what kind of projects that he worked on at Netflix, at Bloomberg. What are his stark differences that he has faced in terms of work culture, the code that he did, the work the team that he was part of, and what you can do to become a good employee at these places. So with I hope आपको ये वीडियो काफ़ी अच्छी लगेगी, and without further ado, let's start with the video. But how's your story towards Netflix, and what was your work, and how is different from the work you did at Bloomberg?
Yeah, I think the modern workforce has changed considerably, right? Like no longer you see folks staying in the same company for more than 5 years these days. I think 3 years seems like a big deal.
Right.
At least based on my observation in a lot of companies. I think companies have also accepted that as a fact to a large degree. Um, you know, the modern workforce is very different, to what for example, father did. My father worked in SPI for decades.
Right.
I still can't believe that one could do that still. At least for me, I really wanted a change after 6.5 years. And I also wanted to kind of move across US, stay in California, get to the heart of Silicon Valley a little bit.
Right.
So that's when I started applying for companies in California, and that's how I got into Netflix. Netflix was very different from my experience at Bloomberg, largely because of its unique culture. I would say I think Netflix really lives on its culture, and freedom and responsibility are the two hallmarks of its culture. And I was really impressed with how they really live up to its word in every decision that they make. Information is shared really broadly and openly. They do really trust their employees, and that kind of feeds back into the company's health overall. People are more inspired with the kind of information that is shared from by the leadership team to all its employees, and how some discussions are really open, and a lot of tactical and strategic decisions are discussed throughout. It's not really like um, nothing is really up for not a debate. You can really take some time and question some strategies, or question some tactical moves that have been decided. There is always this open communication happening at all levels, and it's very interesting and inspiring to see people get involved and voice their opinions. And I think that really shapes up the company.
Right.
I think that was a strategic sorry that was both a both um, let me rephrase that. I think coming from a financial tech company like Bloomberg, where you really have to guard data. You don't really, everything is mostly catered to some really big clients. You deal with companies like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. You can't really like get to really understand, oh, what are they doing with our data. You don't really know. And coming to Netflix, how the consumer space is very different. You don't really deal with like bigger enterprise clients. The clients are mostly us. We are the ones who are streaming Netflix and watching it on different devices. So
Right.
the consumer space is extremely different, and the way they function and the culture of the company was also vastly different. That I think was a big change for me personally when I joined Netflix. And I joined a financial engineering team, which largely focused on building payment systems. So Netflix, when I joined, was in 2018, and that's when they were really gearing up for building their own shows and movies. So they were building their own Netflix studios, and they really wanted that space to be fully tech driven. And in the financial engineering team, our focus was mainly to build payment systems that cater to all the talents that work in the studios. So I focused mostly on um, revamping an existing payment system when I joined the team, and kind of adding features, as time went by. Um, as we produced more shows, as Netflix produced more shows and more movies, more talents were involved. We had to scale
Right.
the system a little bit, and we also had to deal with different kinds of agreements that we have with these talents. There are some big clients like Will Smith, Ryan Reynolds. They've all worked with Netflix, so their deals would be like very very different and unique. So we had to accommodate our systems to pay out the right kind of salary to them. So our payment systems were always in a state of change, and we had to adapt to different kinds of deals that Netflix made with those big talents.
Right.
I spent like close to 2.5 to 3 years working in the payment space. Worked on different sets of things, mostly focusing on the payment application system, but also spent a good amount of time setting up payments infrastructure, like improving and enhancing reliability and stuff like that.
Right.
The last 6 months, I wanted a change and I moved to a different team. This was focused on the developer productivity space. Um, like I said, with Bloomberg, you had this meteoric growth where the employee growth, was more than doubled, tripled during my time. And Netflix had a similar growth after I joined. I think when I joined, we were less than 1,000 in engineering, and when I left, we were 2,000 in engineering. Across all the centers. So we doubled in engineering growth in the last 3 years, which is really really high for a company.
Right.
So this new team was focused on building a product that focused on improving developer efficiency. How quickly would someone be able to come into the company, spin up a service, make sure everything is in order. Is the service healthy? Is it working fine? What happens in case of a disaster scenario?
Right.
And Netflix runs on Amazon servers, so we did a lot of testing on AWS on AWS servers. We do that, and they have a tool called 𝐏𝐻𝐴𝐿, which is open source, and it's a very interesting way to test resiliency of your services and systems. So that's something that happens all the time, and the goal of the team was to build up a platform where someone as an engineer could come in. A typical engineer manages 5 to 6 services at least. There's a lot of things to take care of, a lot of metrics, dashboard, alerts to monitor. And the goal of the team was to build a platform where you get this unified view of everything and make sure that let's say you get up early in the morning, you're having your coffee, and then you're looking at this specific platform. You get a good sense that okay, everything is working fine. I don't see any alerts. I see all the metrics, all the metric numbers are fine, and you don't hear complaints from your customers. You're not getting tickets. So it's more of a unified view of handling all of the things that you own, or your team, or whatever that your team owns. So that seemed really interesting to me, because that was more of a shift um, in the way the company was growing, and there was an organic need for such a product to exist. So I moved to that team. I spent close to 6 months there. Very interesting space, and I spent close to 6 months before I decided to kind of relocate back to India. But overall, Netflix, amazing company in terms of culture. I think if there is one thing that stands out to me about Netflix, is its culture. I think it's extremely unique in how company is run by the leadership team, and how the culture is. It has percolated all the way down. Every individual team operates on the basis of that culture. And amazing set of engineers. Like certainly I've really worked with really smart engineers across in both the companies, and Netflix is no different, and really motivated and inspiring engineers. I've been lucky enough to work with those people in both the companies.
Yeah, I think phenomenal story over there. I think kudos to you for sharing that. And uh, I think we are towards the end of this podcast. And thank you so much for sharing all those details. But would like to know last question. So anybody who is in the industry right now as a software developer or as a senior software developer, what should they look out for? What are the technologies, as in more primarily the skills that they should focus on, and that will make them good engineers?
Yeah, I feel it's a tricky question, mainly because I think the interview process is very different from the actual work that happens within the company. So specifically, getting into these companies, there is always an interview process, and that's fairly extensive and demanding. You would have to be good at coding, have to have solid distributed systems concepts. So those things are still the same when you apply to companies like Bloomberg or Netflix. I think for someone who, let's say, has gotten into these companies
Right.
and the way they would want to grow inside, I think it's largely subjective. I have, at least for me, over the years, I've decided I've not been a big fan of the managerial route. So I tend to stay on the technical side for the most part. And on the technical front, you have different ways of growth. You start out as a junior developer, kind of starting with coding small features, and then you slowly grow into kind of a senior person taking larger responsibilities, and then you
Right.
grow into kind of an architect slash technical director kind of person, where you are in charge of building things from the ground up, making architecture decisions and deciding what technology the company should use. So there is a clear path in both the domains, I would say, on the managerial route and also on the technical side. Largely it really comes down to um, how someone wants to grow. For example, um, when I joined Netflix, I didn't really have a clear understanding of what my career path is going to be, and some of the time one would spend on how the company is set up. They really, once they join the company, you get the real pulse of how things are.
Right.
What kind of growth is available. That's kind of a phase where you talk to people, you understand how each of them has grown in their own way. And if you just observe folks who run the meetings, you get a clear indication of oh, they're doing something that I would like to do, or it's more of observation skill than anything. And those are opportunities that you can evaluate. So
Okay.
on the PM side, for example, you see someone director of product management, running the meetings and kind of setting the vision. And if you observe their career path inside the company, that's an example of how a career path would look like to you, if you are in that domain. If you are looking at a technical director or a VP of a department, if you observe their growth, that's an example over there as well. So largely, I would say be observant on what's happening around you and within the department, and you can always watch some people jumping really ahead of others, and those are the growth that you would want to really watch out for, because they are two steps ahead of everyone else, because they are more interested and invested in how they want to grow. So I would say be more observant and be more vigilant. And of course, in a company that's highly performant, like Netflix and Bloomberg, you would always have these standout people, and if you watch them closely, you would know what steps they are taking to kind of go to the next level, irrespective of what you want to grow in. So I would
Great.
say the biggest um, kind of thought I have is be observant and watch some people who are really doing well, who are well respected within the team, within the department. There are always standout people. So if you observe them closely, you kind of get to know what they're doing and how they're jumping ahead of others, and that's a great way to kind of think about your growth too. Like, if you really like someone, being technically strong, or someone who is a very empathetic leader, that's a really great example to look at, because these are not things that, back in schools and colleges, you kind of have something to study and learn, but in practical kind of company experience, you have to watch people and kind of uh, get the right skills from, kind of borrow skills from others, and then
Right.
grow uniquely as a person. So yeah, I think the single thought I have is, be observant, watch people. A lot of times we tend to focus more on what we are building and kind of lose sight on the bigger picture. I would say be more vigilant and be observant on what different people are doing, and certainly take the good things that everyone has to offer. I think when it comes to, I've worked with really empathetic leaders, and I've grown myself as a person, trying to emulate that. I think, I've tried to apply those things not only at my workplace, but also in my personal life, because those are really excellent skills to have. And on the
Right.
technical side, Netflix and Bloomberg had phenomenal technical people. So there's a lot of things you can look at, their work ethic and how they're really engaged when solving a problem. Those are really fundamental. But when you start applying those little things, and you can actually see yourself being more engaged in solving a problem. And I always think success and compensation as a side product of, whatever you're doing well. So I would
Right.
say focus on the fundamentals really well, be more observant and vigilant, and the growth would take care of itself in the long term.
Yeah, I think it's amazing and a great tip over there. Like, I can totally vouch for that, and I can see that being very, very observant is the way to go, because you learn from the other people. You have role models every part of the place. Like,
Absolutely.
I totally abide by them. And thank you so much for sharing all of these details in depth with us. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I really enjoyed it. And all the folks who are listening in, I hope this video have been very, very beneficial for you guys. All the folks who are looking forward to connect with Dinesh, I will put his LinkedIn link in the description box below. You can check that out. And till then, take care. I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much, Dinesh.